Okay, so today is August 14th, and I want to talk through what's actually going on astrologically right now, because it's a slightly weird, in-between kind of day, and I think it's worth understanding instead of just scrolling past. One more thing before I get into it. You've probably seen some pretty over-the-top framing of this eclipse online. This changes everything, once in decades, that kind of language. I want to be straight with you about that. Some of it's grounded in something real. The four-planet configuration especially is genuinely unusual and worth knowing about. But a lot of the hype around specific dates is more about engagement than accuracy. Astrology doesn't actually work on a everything hinges on this one-day basis. It's more like weather, broad patterns that shift gradually and overlap with each other. So I'd rather give you an honest, slightly less dramatic breakdown of what's actually going on than tell you today is the most important day of your life. It's probably not. It's just a day worth paying a little attention to, which is a smaller and more useful claim. Here's the quick context. 2 days ago, on August 12th, there was a total solar eclipse in Leo. Yesterday, August 13th, the Perseid meteor shower hit its peak. And underneath both of those, there's a slower, bigger thing going on this summer. A rare alignment between Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus that astrologers have been talking about since it peaked back in late July. So today isn't a standalone event. It's more like day 3 of a stretch that's been building since the start of the month. And I think that context actually matters, because a lot of people are going to watch a video like this and expect some single, dramatic, today is the day moment. That's not really how any of this works. It's more gradual than that. And honestly, that's kind of the point. Let's start with the most literal thing, which is the sky itself. The Perseids peaked last night, but that doesn't mean they're over. Earth is still moving through the same debris trail from Comet Swift-Tuttle, so you can still catch meteors tonight and for the next several nights, just at a lower rate than the peak. If you're the type who likes actually looking up, tonight's still worth 10 minutes outside if your sky is dark enough. I wouldn't build the whole day around it, but it's a nice, low-effort way to feel connected to something bigger than your inbox for a few minutes. If you do go out, a couple of practical notes. You don't need to stare at any one spot in the sky. Meteors can streak across pretty much anywhere, so it's actually better to just relax your gaze and take in as much of the sky as you can. Give your eyes a solid 15 or 20 minutes to adjust to the dark before you judge how many you're seeing. Phone screens will wreck that adjustment instantly, so if you're checking your phone between glances, you're basically resetting the clock. And obviously, less light pollution means more visible meteors. So if you've got any option to get away from streetlights, even just stepping into a backyard instead of standing under a porch light, it'll make a real difference. I'll be honest, most people who go out expecting a non-stop fireworks show end up a little underwhelmed, because that's not really what it looks like in person. It's more like patience rewarded every few minutes with a quick streak of light. If you go in with that expectation, it's actually a pretty nice, calm way to spend part of an evening. Timing-wise, the best window is usually after midnight and before dawn, since that's when your part of Earth is rotating into the debris stream head-on rather than getting hit from the side. If staying up that late isn't realistic, even an hour or two after full dark, once the sky's properly dark and before the moon, if it's up, gets too bright, will still give you a decent shot. This year's actually a nice one for viewing because the new moon lines up right around the peak, so there's minimal moonlight washing out the fainter meteors, which is honestly the biggest variable in how many you end up seeing on any given year. Now, the eclipse. This is the part I think is genuinely useful to understand, because most people treat an eclipse like a single-day event and then move on. But astrologically, eclipses don't really work like that. The eclipse itself is a peak moment, sure, but the effects tend to unfold over the following days and weeks, not just in the 24 hours after. So today, 2 days out, you're still very much inside that window. If you noticed anything shift for you around the 12th, a mood, a decision you'd been avoiding, a conversation that suddenly felt necessary, that thread is probably still active right now. It hasn't resolved yet. It's still working itself out. Leo eclipses specifically tend to touch on identity, not in some abstract, cosmic sense, but in a pretty concrete way. How you're presenting yourself, what you've been quietly outgrowing, where you've been playing smaller than you actually are because it felt safer or more convenient. If something like that has been on your mind the past couple of days, today's a reasonable day to actually sit with it instead of pushing it aside again. Quick technical aside, since I think it's actually useful to know the difference. A solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the sun and Earth. So from our view, the moon blocks out the sun. That only happens at a new moon, and eclipses always show up in pairs a couple of weeks apart, a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse, roughly 2 weeks before or after each other. In this case, the next one is a partial lunar eclipse on August 28th in Pisces. So there's actually another eclipse coming in about 2 weeks, and this whole stretch is part of a longer series that's been unfolding on the Leo axis since a solar eclipse in Aquarius back in February. Eclipses tend to come in these seasons rather than as one-off isolated events, which is honestly a big part of why their effects don't wrap up in a single day. You're dealing with a stretch of weeks, not hours, and honestly, this particular series runs all the way through early 2028. One more astronomy detail that I think is genuinely interesting, even outside the astrology framing. Eclipses aren't random. They happen in cycles called Saros cycles, roughly 18 years and 11 days apart, where a very similar eclipse geometry repeats. So this Leo eclipse has siblings, earlier versions of basically the same eclipse that happened about 18 years ago, and future versions that'll happen about 18 years from now. Astrologers sometimes look back at what was going on in the world or in your own life around that last cycle for clues about what this one might be echoing. You don't need to track that down to get something out of today, but if you're the research type, it's a fun rabbit hole. Here's where it gets more specific to today, though. The moon moved into Virgo overnight, and that's actually the detail I think matters most for how today feels compared to yesterday or the day before. Virgo follows Leo for a reason that makes a lot of intuitive sense once you sit with it. Leo is about the big, expressive, this is who I am energy. Virgo is about refinement. It's the sign that takes a broad idea and asks, okay, but how does this actually work day to day? What's the next concrete step? So with the moon in Virgo today, right on the heels of a Leo eclipse, there's a pretty natural shift in tone. The last couple of days may have felt big, maybe a little overwhelming, maybe emotionally loud. Today probably feels quieter and more practical. That's not a downgrade. That's actually useful. Big realizations need somewhere to land, and Virgo is good at building that landing spot. Practically, this can show up as wanting to organize something, tidy up a space, make a list, or just think more clearly about a decision instead of feeling it in this vague, diffuse way. If you had some kind of insight around the eclipse, today's a decent day to get specific about it. Not, I need to change my life, which is a thought that's true, but also kind of useless on its own, but something smaller and more answerable. Like, what's one thing I could actually do this week that moves this forward? A quick caveat, because I think it's worth saying. Virgo energy can also tip into overthinking or being overly critical of yourself if you're not careful. If you notice that voice showing up today, the one that says you're not doing enough or not doing it well enough, that's worth noticing and not just accepting at face value. The useful version of this energy is, what's one small step, not, why haven't you fixed everything yet? Those are different questions, and only one of them is actually helpful. There's also a pretty common piece of astrology advice worth mentioning here, which is that you shouldn't make big, irreversible decisions right during an eclipse window, quitting a job on the spot, ending a relationship in the heat of the moment, that kind of thing. I think that advice is generally reasonable, but it's also sometimes used as an excuse to avoid deciding anything at all. There's a difference between, I shouldn't act impulsively right now, and I should never act. A Virgo moon day like today is actually a decent middle ground for that tension. It's not asking you to make some huge, irreversible call. It's asking you to get organized around a decision you might already be circling, so that when you do act, you're doing it from a clearer place rather than a reactive one. Now, a bit more on that 4-planet alignment I mentioned, since it's the backdrop for all of this, even if it's not the headline today. Jupiter is in Leo right now, which is about expansion and confidence, wanting more room to actually be yourself rather than a smaller, safer version of yourself. In day-to-day terms, this can look like being a little less willing to shrink yourself in a conversation, or noticing you want more out of a situation than you've been settling for. Neptune is in Aries, which pairs vision and imagination with a willingness to act before you have the whole picture figured out. This one's a little more subtle. It tends to show up as a hunch or a pull towards something you can't fully explain yet. Neptune isn't big on evidence. It just kind of nudges you, and you either trust the nudge or you don't. Pluto is in Aquarius, which has more to do with letting go of an old identity or role that no longer fits and figuring out what you're actually here to contribute versus what you've been performing out of habit. This is a slower burn than the others. Pluto takes years to move through a sign, so this isn't a today thing so much as a this has probably been building for a while and you already know it thing. And Uranus is in Gemini, which tends to bring sudden clarity, ideas or realizations that show up out of nowhere and rearrange how you're thinking about something. If you've had a random thought pop into your head this week that felt oddly specific or out of place, that's a pretty classic Uranus and Gemini signature. Worth paying attention to those instead of dismissing them as random noise. This configuration has been building since earlier this year, and it's not going anywhere fast. These are slow-moving planets, so don't expect it to resolve by next week. What's different today is just that it's got the eclipse and the Perseids layered on top of it, plus now this Virgo moon asking you to get practical about whatever's been stirring. So if you felt like this whole summer has had a certain undertone to it, a sense that something's shifting, even if you can't fully name it, that's probably this alignment. Today's just a more grounded, less dramatic day within that larger stretch. Worth saying too, this kind of 4 outer planet configuration doesn't come around often. The last time astrologers pointed to something comparable in scale was decades ago, tied to major shifts on a societal level, not just a personal one. That doesn't mean you need to treat this week like it's history in the making. It just means the backdrop right now is a little more charged than a typical August. So if things have felt unusually intense or unusually clarifying lately, you're not imagining it. For context on where that idea comes from, there's a whole subfield of astrology built around tracking outer planet cycles specifically. The logic being that Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto move slowly enough that their configurations tend to line up with bigger, slower-moving shifts in the world rather than the day-to-day stuff faster planets like Mercury or Venus pick up on. Some researchers in that space have spent decades cataloging when these outer planets cluster together and comparing that to major historical turning points. It's a genuinely interesting body of work if you're curious, though I'd take any specific date-by-date predictions from it with a decent amount of skepticism. Correlation over a century of data is one thing, confidently predicting a specific week is another. Before I get into the practical part, let me address the obvious thing. If you don't buy into astrology at all, that's fine, genuinely. I'm not going to try to convince you the planets are causing things to happen to you. What I'd say instead is that a lot of this works less like prediction and more like a prompt. It gives you a reason to actually pause and check in with yourself on a random Thursday instead of just running on autopilot. You could get the same value from a journaling habit or a weekly check-in with a friend. Astrology is just one framework among many for doing that, and some people find it a more interesting one than a blank page. Use whatever works for you. So what does any of this actually mean for what you do today? I'll keep this simple, because I don't think you need a long list of rituals or anything like that. First, if something surfaced for you around the eclipse, an idea, a decision, a feeling about where your life is headed, it's worth spending a few minutes actually writing it down today rather than just carrying it around in your head. You don't need to solve it. Just get it out of the vague feeling stage and into something you can actually look at. Second, given the Virgo moon, this is a decent day to pick one small, concrete step related to whatever that thing is and just do it. Not a huge life decision. Something realistic. Send the message you've been drafting. Look up the one piece of information you've been avoiding looking up. Make the appointment. Small, boring, real steps are exactly what this particular energy is good for, and honestly, they tend to matter more than the big dramatic gestures anyway. Third, if you get a clear night, it's worth stepping outside for a bit and watching for meteors. Not because it's going to change your life, but because there's something genuinely nice about looking up at something that big and old and ongoing for a few minutes. It's a decent reset, and it costs you nothing. I'll say this too, because I think it's worth being upfront about. Astrology isn't something you need to take as literal prediction. I'd treat it more like a lens, a way of noticing patterns and giving yourself permission to reflect on something you might otherwise brush past on a normal Thursday. If something in this resonates, use it. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Take what's useful and leave the rest. Let me break it down a little more specifically by area of life, since get practical can mean pretty different things depending on what's actually going on for you. If it's work-related, today's a reasonable day to actually organize whatever's been messy. An overdue email, a project you've been circling without starting, a conversation with a manager or a client you've been putting off. Virgo energy is genuinely good at admin-type tasks. So if you've been dreading something boring but necessary, today might feel a little easier to knock out than usual. If it's relationship-related, this is less about big declarations and more about clarity. If there's a conversation you've been avoiding because it feels too big, see if you can break it down into a smaller, more specific version of itself. Instead of, we need to talk about our whole relationship, maybe it's, I want to bring up this one specific thing that's been bothering me. Smaller and more precise tends to actually get heard, where big and vague tends to just create anxiety on both sides. If it's health or body related, Virgo is traditionally associated with routines, habits, that kind of day-to-day maintenance. If there's something you've been meaning to start, a doctor's appointment, a change to your sleep schedule, drinking more water, today's a decent day to set it up, rather than just deciding to change everything overnight. Systems tend to outlast willpower, and this is a good day for building a system rather than relying on motivation. And if it's more of an internal, identity level thing, the kind of thing that got stirred up by the eclipse itself, today's less about doing something dramatic and more about naming it accurately. What exactly is shifting? What you're outgrowing? What version of yourself you're moving toward? You don't have to act on all of that today. Just get honest about what it actually is. One thing I'd add here, because I think it gets missed a lot in this kind of content, none of this is about becoming a totally different person overnight. Most real identity shifts are less dramatic than they get made out to be. It's less, I woke up a new person, and more, I stopped doing the thing that didn't fit anymore. One conversation, one habit, one decision at a time. If you're expecting some single lightning bolt moment where everything clicks, you might be waiting a while. And honestly, you might miss the quieter, more useful version of it while you're waiting for the dramatic one. Looking a little further ahead, since I know some of you will ask, this stretch doesn't just end today. The moon moves through the rest of the zodiac over the coming weeks the way it always does, so the specific day-to-day flavor will keep shifting. But the bigger picture, the eclipse series on the Leo axis and this 4-planet configuration in the background is going to keep coloring things through the rest of the year. There's another eclipse coming August 28th, a partial lunar eclipse in Pisces, which tends to bring more emotional, intuitive themes rather than the identity-focused stuff we've had this week. So if today feels like a checkpoint rather than a finish line, that's basically accurate. It is one. If you want a couple of actual prompts instead of just write it down, here are a few that tend to work well on a day like today. What did I notice shifting in myself over the past 2 days that I haven't said out loud yet? What's one area of my life where I've been performing a version of myself that doesn't quite fit anymore? If I trusted my own judgment completely right now, what would I do differently this week? You don't need to answer all 3. Pick whichever one actually lands, and just write for a few minutes without editing yourself. Since a lot of people watching this will want to know what it looks like for their specific sign, I'll go through it briefly. Keep in mind, sun sign, astrology is a pretty broad brush. Your rising sign and moon sign shape things too, but this should give you a general read. If you know your rising sign, it's actually worth reading that one too, since day-to-day mood and outward behavior tend to track the rising sign more closely than the sun sign does. Aries. This is a decent day to get quietly organized around something you've been meaning to start. You tend to move fast once you decide, so the Virgo moon is mostly useful for making sure you're pointed the right direction before you sprint. Taurus. Home and daily routine themes are probably more active than usual. If your space has felt cluttered or your schedules felt chaotic, today's a good day to fix one small piece of that rather than the whole thing at once. Gemini, with Uranus in your sign this year, you've probably had more of those out-of-nowhere realizations than most people lately. Today's a good day to actually write one of them down before it slips away, instead of just moving on to the next thought. Cancer. This eclipse cycle has likely been touching your closest relationships and how safe you feel being fully yourself around people. Today, a small, honest conversation probably does more for you than a big dramatic one would. Leo, this whole eclipse was in your sign, so if anyone's feeling the identity shift theme directly, it's you. Today's less about the big realization and more about picking one concrete way to actually live it, even in something small. Virgo, the moon's in your sign today, so you're probably feeling more like yourself than you have the past couple of days. More clear-headed, more able to just get things done. Use that. It won't necessarily last at this intensity. Libra, relationship dynamics are probably more front and center than usual right now. If there's an imbalance you've been quietly noticing, today's a reasonable day to name it to yourself clearly, even if you're not ready to bring it up with the other person yet. Scorpio, you tend to feel eclipses more intensely than most signs. It's just how you're wired. If the past couple of days have felt like a lot, today's quieter energy is a good chance to actually rest and process instead of pushing through. Sagittarius, this is probably showing up as restlessness, a pull toward a bigger idea or a longer-term plan that feels different from the life you've currently got set up. Today, get specific about one actual next step instead of just daydreaming about the whole picture. Capricorn, career and reputation themes are likely more active for you right now, maybe a sense that you're ready for people to see you differently at work. Today's Virgo moon is genuinely useful for this. It's a good day to actually organize the practical side of that shift. Aquarius, with Pluto in your sign for these next several years, you're in the middle of a longer identity overhaul than a 2-day eclipse window can fully capture. Today, a small act of honesty with yourself about what you're outgrowing is worth more than trying to force a big decision. Pisces, you've got that lunar eclipse coming your way on the 28th, so this is a bit of a lead-up period for you. Today's a good day to pay attention to your dreams, your intuition, whatever's coming up in quiet moments, without needing to act on any of it yet. That's really it for today. Nothing here requires a big leap. It's more a quieter, get practical about what you already know kind of day, sandwiched between a big eclipse and whatever comes next. One last thought before I wrap up. I think it's easy, especially in this corner of content, to feel like you're constantly missing some big cosmic moment, like there's always a portal or a window or an alignment you're supposed to be catching in real time or else you've blown it. I don't think that's actually true, and I don't want to leave you with that feeling. Astrology, at its most useful, is just a way of noticing what's already true about your life and giving yourself a little more permission to act on it. It's not a countdown clock. If today passes and you don't do any of what I just talked about, that's fine. There'll be another day, another moon phase, another reasonable moment to check in with yourself. The value here isn't in perfect timing. It's in building a habit of actually paying attention. If you want, drop a comment with what's been coming up for you the past couple of days. I actually read through these, and it helps me figure out what to cover next. And if this kind of grounded, no-fluff astrology breakdown is useful to you, subscribing helps me keep making them. I'll be back with more as this week unfolds.